snow falls in the heart of the Ural Mountains, a place so remote that even official maps mark it with hesitation. Silence reigns, a silence so deep it feels as if time itself has frozen there. This is a land that still holds secrets beyond human understanding. And one of those secrets began on a winter night in 1959. 9 hikers, skilled, young, and full of life, set out on what was meant to be a simple winter expedition. But none of them ever returned. What was found later were fragments of their story: a torn tent, footprints in the snow, and lifeless bodies frozen in the eternal stillness of the mountain. That event would later be known as the Dyatlov Pass incident. More than 60 years have passed since that night, and yet the questions only grow. Why was the tent cut open from the inside? Why were the bodies discovered miles away, barefoot and half-dressed in the snow? What could have terrified 9 experienced mountaineers so much that they fled into the darkness at -30 degrees, never to return? No official report ever offered an answer. Only silence and countless theories, from avalanches to secret military tests, from sudden madness to something not human. But why does this story still haunt people today? Perhaps because, unlike many other tragedies, the Dyatlov Pass is not merely the story of 9 deaths. It's a portrait of humankind's helplessness against nature, and perhaps against the unknown. In this documentary, we will not only retrace their final journey, step by step, but also explore other similar incidents that occurred in the decades that followed, each marked by the same chilling patterns. To ask, do other mountains hide the same secret? Winter, 1959. The small city of Ekaterinburg, then known as Sverdlovsk, was deep in winter's grip. Inside the dormitory of the Ural Polytechnic Institute, a group of students prepared for an expedition that would serve as the final test of their mountaineering training. Their leader was Igor Dyatlov, a 23-year-old engineering student known for his precision, discipline, and determination. His notebook was filled with sketches, calculations, and detailed plans for the route, a journey that would soon bear his name forever. There were 9 members in total. Lyudmila Dubinina, a strong-willed, fearless woman unshaken by any hardship. Zina Kolmogorova, athletic, optimistic, always smiling even in freezing wind. Yuri Doroshenko and Yuri Krivonishenko, close friends, energetic and full of humor. Alexander Kolovatov, quiet, methodical, and fascinated by physics. Rustam Slobodin, a runner, analytical and thoughtful. Nikolai Thibault-Brignol, the intellectual, always writing notes in a small journal. Semyon Zolotaryov, 38 years old, much older than the rest, who joined at the last minute. And finally, Igor Dyatlov, the meticulous leader whose name would become immortalized in mystery. All were trained, disciplined, and experienced with the brutal cold of the Urals. But none of them knew this would be their final climb. In Igor's diary, he had written, Objective, Mount Otorten. Difficulty level, Category 3. Participants, 9. Return date, February 12th. Every detail was organized. The food rations, The route, the checkpoints. Their destination lay in the northern Urals, in a region known by the local Mansi people as Kolatsyakl, the Mountain of the Dead. Perhaps if they had taken that name more seriously, their fate might have been different. January 25th, 1959. The group boarded a train from Sverdlovsk, laughing, joking, unaware that the rails beneath them led straight into history. From there, they traveled by truck, then by sleigh, until they reached a small, remote village called Vijay, the last settlement before the wilderness swallowed the map. Here, they took one final group photo. Smiling faces, snowflakes caught in hair, the gleam of youth and determination in their eyes. That photograph would become haunting later, a frozen moment before everything changed. From Vijay, they began their trek on foot. In the group's shared journal, one of them wrote, "Today was a good day. The wind is cold, but our spirits are warm. We are on our way." The last note of peace before the mountain claimed their silence. As they climbed higher, the weather grew harsher. The wind sharpened like knives, temperatures dropping to -30 degrees Celsius. Snowdrifts reached their knees. Each day, they trudged deeper into the wilderness, mapping, joking, documenting everything, never knowing these would be their final entries. On January 30th, one member, Yuri Yudin, fell ill with severe pain in his legs and had to turn back. He was the only one who would live to tell their story. Before he left, Igor Dyatlov told him with a grin, "Wait for us, Yuri. We'll be back with stories to tell." But Yuri never saw his friends again. From that day forward, only their notebooks and film rolls would speak for them. One of the last diary entries read, "The wind is strong today. Visibility is poor. But the mood is good. We're getting closer to our goal." They never reached that goal. The mountain consumed them, and weeks later, search teams would uncover something that even nightmares could not imagine. February 1st, 1959. The day that would become one of the greatest mysteries of the 20th century. After days of exhausting climbing, the Dyatlov group reached the slope of a mountain called Kolatsyakl. In the Mansi language, the Mountain of the Dead. In their final diary entry, someone wrote, "The wind blows from the north. Heavy, cold snow. We decided to camp here on the slope." That decision would become one of the central puzzles of the entire case. According to their plan, they should have descended a little lower into the forest, where trees could shield them from the brutal wind. But Igor decided to camp right there on the open slope, perhaps out of confidence, or maybe impatience to reach the summit the next morning. No one will ever know why. Night fell. The temperature plummeted below -30. The wind howled like an animal through the mountains, bending the tent under the weight of falling snow. Inside, the group huddled together, tired, hungry, but still in good spirits. Their cameras captured moments that would later chill the world. Faces half lit by lantern glow, weary smiles, snowflakes on their clothes, the last images of life before the unknown descended. Something happened that night. We don't know what. But we know that from that moment on, nothing was the same. Sometime after midnight, everything went wrong. The exact hour remains a mystery. What we do know is that footprints were later found leading away from the tent. Neat, deliberate, all in one direction. Not the frantic chaos of panic, but the steady trail of people walking into the dark. Inside the tent, everything was left in order. Boots, clothes, equipment, notebooks. But the tent itself had been cut open from the inside. As one official report later stated, the tent was slashed open from within. It was as if, in the middle of the night, something had terrified them enough to escape. But whatever it was, it left no trace. Outside, the night was absolute. No light, no sound, no witnesses. Only the endless howl of the wind and the weight of falling snow. Did they hear something? Did they see a light? Or did the mountain itself awaken that night? We may never know. But what is certain is this. After that night, not one of the 9 would ever be seen alive again. When dawn came, the mountain was silent. The wind erased their footprints. Snow buried the truth. Weeks later, search teams would return to that frozen slope, and what they would find would ignite one of the most enduring mysteries of our time. February 21st, 1959. More than 3 weeks had passed since anyone had heard from the Dyatlov group. Families grew restless. The university worried. Local authorities still hoped the delay was due to bad weather. But as the days turned into weeks, hope began to fade. Search parties were finally organized. Students, volunteers, soldiers, even pilots joined the effort. They followed the planned route that Dyatlov had left behind. Snow covered everything. The temperature remained far below freezing, and the wind from the north blew with an unnatural force. Yuri Yudin, the only survivor, gave investigators his notebook, a hand-drawn map that now became the only clue to finding his lost friends. On February 26th, at an altitude of about 1,100 meters, one of the search teams spotted something strange beneath a thin layer of snow. A patch of fabric, faded, half buried. They dug carefully, and what emerged was the tent of the Dyatlov group. The tent lay partially collapsed, half buried by drifting snow. Inside were all the hikers' belongings: boots, clothing, backpacks, food, journals, cameras. Everything was in place. Everything except the people. At first glance, nothing looked chaotic, until they noticed the cuts. The tent fabric had been sliced open from the inside. Not torn, not clawed. Cut cleanly. As if those inside, in total darkness and terror, had tried to carve their way out. But why? Why would 9 trained mountaineers, in the middle of a deadly winter night, cut open their tent from within and walk barefoot into the snow? Around the tent, the searchers found footprints, about 9 sets of them. They were clear, deliberate, arranged in a line rather than scattered. Some showed bare feet, others only socks or a single wrapped cloth. The tracks led down the slope for nearly 500 meters, toward the edge of a nearby forest, and then they simply vanished. The snow swallowed them whole. Slash. Stop. That was when everyone realized this was no ordinary accident. The official search report would later read, "No signs of struggle or the presence of strangers were found." The tent was properly erected and the personal belongings were undisturbed. The only inexplicable detail is the manner of exit and the footprints leading away. One of the rescuers later said, "The mountain felt quieter than ever before, as if it didn't want us to discover what had happened." In the following days, the search widened. Teams combed the forest below, probing the snow with poles, calling out names that the wind carried away unanswered. And slowly, the mountain began to give up fragments of its secret. Each discovery only deepened mystery. Something had happened on that slope, something that defied explanation. Was it an avalanche, a sudden panic, or something that existed beyond human understanding? The official investigation began soon after, and even the Soviet military sent specialists to the scene. But as they examined the evidence, they too began to realize nothing about this tragedy made sense. The official investigation into the Dyatlov Pass incident began in early March 1959. The case was assigned to a regional prosecutor named Lev Ivanov, a man known for his diligence and composure. At first, he assumed it was just a tragic accident, another example of nature's cruelty in the high Urals. But the deeper he went into the evidence, the more he realized nothing about this case was ordinary. The initial reports revealed something shocking. The site of the tragedy showed no signs of an avalanche. The slope was too shallow for such a slide to occur, and the snow patterns did not match the destruction typical of one. Yet the tent was torn apart, and the group had clearly fled in panic. The central question remained: why did they leave the tent? Search teams recovered notebooks, diaries, and rolls of film that offered glimpses into the group's final days. One diary entry read, "We are tired tonight, but our mood is good. Tomorrow will be a difficult day." No hint of fear, no sign of conflict or despair. They were calm, organized, as if nothing could go wrong. As weeks passed, the investigation shifted from a simple natural disaster to a full-scale mystery. Theories multiplied, some scientific, some fantastical, all trying to answer the same haunting question: what happened that night? The first and most obvious theory was an avalanche. Perhaps the sound of snow shifting above them caused sudden panic, forcing the hikers to cut open their tent and escape downhill for safety. But later experts pointed out that the slope's angle was too gentle, and that no physical evidence of a snowslide existed. The avalanche theory began to crumble. Then came another idea, one that sounded stranger, but carried weight. Scientists suggested the mountain's wind could have created infrasound, low-frequency waves below the range of human hearing. Such vibrations can cause nausea, confusion, and intense fear in the brain, sometimes leading to a sensation of impending doom. Perhaps that night, the group experienced an overwhelming wave of terror, panic without cause, and fled the tent, disoriented, never finding their way back. It was plausible, but not convincing. If fear alone had driven them out, why did none of them return once the danger passed? Still, there were other, darker theories. Some locals claimed to have seen strange orange lights moving in the sky during those same nights. At the time, the Ural Mountains were home to secret Soviet military tests. Rockets, mines, parachute flares. Could the hikers have witnessed something they weren't meant to see? A weapons test gone wrong? The Soviet government denied all such claims. Yet flight logs and documents later revealed that military operations had indeed taken place in the region that week. The official reports, however, made no mention of them. Other investigators suggested that Igor Dyatlov's decision to pitch the tent on an exposed slope might have triggered disaster. Perhaps the wind caused part of the snow above them to collapse, creating a chain reaction of fear and confusion. But again, why didn't they return to their tent once the danger passed? Their footprints proved they could have. Unpacked as months passed, none of the hypotheses fit all the facts. Each theory explained something and left something else unanswered. Finally, in May 1959, the Soviet authorities closed the case with a vague and unsettling statement: death caused by an unknown, compelling force. It was an eerie phrase, neither an explanation nor a denial. It sounded almost like an admission that the truth was beyond understanding. Some even believed the government was hiding something. Others thought the mountain itself was the culprit. Years passed, but the mystery refused to die. Researchers, journalists, and curious minds from around the world kept returning to the frozen pass, searching for answers that never came. The Dyatlov Pass had become more than a tragedy. It had become a symbol, a reminder of how fragile we are against nature and against the unknown. Decades passed. The Soviet Union fell. Archives opened, and a new generation of scientists and researchers began revisiting the Dyatlov case. This time armed with modern tools, open debate, and fewer political barriers. In the 1990s and 2000s, photographs, diaries, and even autopsy reports resurfaced online. People across the world pored over every image, every note, every word, trying to piece together what had really happened that freezing night in February 1959. Forensic experts, mountaineers, psychologists, all had their own theories. Some said it was hypothermia and paradoxical undressing, a strange phenomenon in which victims of extreme cold suddenly feel hot and remove their clothes. Others pointed to signs of military involvement, radiation traces found on some garments, and official secrecy that seemed suspicious. A few even whispered about extraterrestrial encounters, fueled by the strange orange lights seen in the sky that night. But still, nothing perfectly fit. Each answer unraveled new questions. Then, in 2019, the Russian Prosecutor General's office officially reopened the investigation. After 60 years of confusion and rumor, a new team of scientists was sent to the site, armed with drones, weather models, and decades of accumulated data. What they discovered surprised even the skeptics. Their conclusion combined logic and tragedy in equal measure. It was not aliens, not a secret weapon, not murder. It was nature itself, cruel, unpredictable, and silent. Using advanced computer simulations originally developed by the makers of the film Frozen, researchers recreated the exact terrain, snow density, and wind conditions of that night. Their models revealed that a small, localized avalanche, not a massive slope collapse, but a compact block of snow, could have struck the tent hours after the group had settled in. It would have been enough to crush part of the tent, injure one or two members, and create an overwhelming panic. In the pitch-black cold, believing a larger avalanche was moments away, the hikers may have slashed open the tent and fled for safety. Unable to see, disoriented by the storm, they lost each other in the darkness and froze before they could return. The theory explained the footprints, the tent damage, and the sudden flight, but it still left gaps. Why did the rescuers find traces of radiation on some clothing? Why were some injuries so severe, unlike anything caused by a simple fall? And most importantly, why did the Soviet government close the case so abruptly with that haunting phrase, an unknown compelling force? Even with modern science, the story remained partly in shadow, and truth seekers alike. At the site, a stone monument stands in the snow, engraved with 9 names. Each winter, wind howls through the frozen pines, and travelers say it sounds almost like voices, calling out across time. Perhaps it's only the wind. Or perhaps, as some believe, the mountain remembers. Over 6 decades have passed since that frozen night in 1959, and still, the Dyatlov Pass refuses to give up all its secrets. Time has buried many of the clues beneath layers of snow, silence, and speculation. But the questions remain, whispering through the wind that crosses the Ural Mountains. Every few years, a new theory emerges. Every generation rediscovers the same photographs, the same diaries, and tries to make sense of the same impossible details. The hikers of the Dyatlov expedition have become more than just victims of a tragedy. They are symbols of human curiosity, courage, and fragility. Their story is a reminder of how small we are against the vast, cold face of nature, and how, even in the most rational of times, there are still places where the unknown reigns. Today, the mountain that once claimed their lives has become a destination. Adventurers climb it not out of fear, but out of reverence. They place flowers at the memorial stone near the site of the tent. A simple granite marker engraved with 9 names. Igor Dyatlov, Zina Kolmogorova, Luda Dubinina, Yuri Doroshenko, Rustem Slobodin, Nikolai Thibault-Brignoles, Alexander Kolovatov, and Yuri Yudin, the one who lived to tell their story. Visitors say that when the wind rises and the snow swirls through the trees, you can almost feel their presence, as if the mountain itself remembers their laughter, their determination, their final night. For scientists, the Dyatlov Pass remains an unsolved puzzle. For storytellers, it is a legend. For the families, it is a wound that never truly healed. Perhaps the truth lies buried forever beneath the snow. Or perhaps, as some believe, the Dyatlov Pass is not meant to be solved, only remembered. Because sometimes, what makes a mystery eternal is not the lack of answers, but the silence that follows. The Dyatlov Pass, a name carved into the ice of history, 9 souls lost to the mountain, and a secret that endures through generations. In the end, maybe it's not about what happened that night, but about why we can't stop asking.